Hi everyone, I'm Terry, and welcome to our new recorded series on missing persons. We're going to be sharing these stories hopefully twice a week, every week, because the more eyes we can get on these cases, the better the chance that someone somewhere might recognize anything of importance. All we ask in return is simple: like, subscribe, and please share. Sharing these stories is so much more valuable than most people realize. One share can reach the right person, maybe someone who remembers something, sees something, or connects a small detail that can make a huge difference. So let's get started. Before we begin, though, I want to remind you that these are true crime cases. That means there are almost always difficult or emotional topics involved. And this one's no different. It involves a missing child and other potentially upsetting details. If at any point it feels too heavy, take a break and come back when you're ready. We'll leave the light on for you. Stories just stay with you, even when there aren't any answers. Well, this is one of those stories. It's about a little boy. His name was Timmothy Pitzen, and he's from Aurora, Illinois. He was 6 years old, just finishing kindergarten, when he disappeared. Early one spring morning, his mom checked him out of school for what she said was a family emergency. That's the last time anyone saw him. Over the next 3 days, his mother took him on a mysterious road trip across Illinois and Wisconsin, to the zoo, to water parks, and to nice hotels. And then he was gone. She left behind a note that said Timothy was safe, but that no one would ever find him. More than a decade later, we still don't know where he is or what really happened. But maybe by walking through what we do know, the facts, the timeline, and the people, we can start to understand this case a little better. So, this case takes place in 2011. Timothy was born on October 18th, 2004. He was the only child of James and Amy, and his age was 6 at the disappearance. He was active, outgoing, and loved Matchbox cars. He loved to swim. He was a wonderful little boy by accounts from everyone who knew him. Now, Amy checked Timothy out. Well, let me back up a moment. The father, James, took Timothy to school that morning. And then, not even an hour or so later, his mother, Amy, came and checked him out of Greenman Elementary. She claimed it was a family emergency. Now, I have to back up on this, sorry. Okay. She dropped off her blue Ford Expedition at a repair shop around 10:30 a.m. One of the shop employees there at the repair shop gave Amy and Timothy a ride to the Brookfield Zoo. And they did this while the SUV was being repaired. So she went back later that afternoon and returned and picked up the repaired SUV. And then she and Timothy continued on their excursion. They went on to Key Lime Cove Resort. James went to pick up Timothy at school that afternoon. And apparently this was normal. It was normal for the dad to drop him off and then pick him up. So the mom and dad, just so you know, they were having some problems, but they were still married. So this is not really like a custody case. But when he goes to pick him up that afternoon, he can't find him. You know, he goes to the school and they say, no, your wife came and picked him up. His mother came and picked him up. Well, this was a shock because James didn't know anything about that. So, whoops. This thing's a little bit difficult on the pausing. I'm sorry. It'll get smoother as we go forward with each one of these recordings. Okay, so he was born on October 18th, 2004 in Aurora, Illinois. He was the only child. We talked about how he loved Matchbox, swimming, and all of that. Now, Amy did not let anyone know that she was checking Timothy out of the elementary school, and she said it was a family emergency. Then she took him to the zoo. They stayed overnight at Key Lime Cove Resort. Now, if someone is from that area, you can comment. But from everything I read, that resort was a very nice place. So she took him to the zoo, which that was one of his favorite places ever. She took him to this resort so that he could swim and have fun. So then when James went to pick him up that afternoon, he was missing. He wasn't there to be picked up. And what's interesting is Amy, the mom, called James's brother not James. And Timothy's voice was heard in the background. And basically, she just said, he's fine, everything's fine. Then they traveled to Wisconsin Dells to a Kalahari resort, and it appears that that was a nice resort as well. And we know that they were there because they were captured on security footage at 10 a.m. on the 13th. Now remember, this was the 11th, so he'd been gone 2 days at this point. Can you imagine? I mean, I cannot even imagine what that father is going through. Not knowing what's going on, not having any idea that his mother was going to take him out, and then all of a sudden, they're gone. But the security footage showed Amy and Timothy checking out of the resort. Now, at 1:30, Amy called her family, and the only thing they could hear in the background was Timothy saying he was hungry. This was the last point of contact from Timothy, the last time anyone heard his voice. Look, let me go back. Now, this is where things get interesting because on the evening of May 13th, Amy was seen alone at a Family Dollar store in Winnebago, Illinois. She later stopped and shopped at Sullivan's Foods, and she checked into a Rockford Inn that evening. Now, the following day, trigger warning, again, she unalived herself with pills and some type of wounds. I could not find details about exactly what she did to herself, but the bottom line is that the hotel staff discovered her in that room around 12:30, and he was not with her. Timothy was not with her, but there was a note and letters that said Timothy was safe and being cared for, and that no one will ever find him. He was not at the scene, and his whereabouts remain unknown. Now, there's a few interesting things here. When I was researching this case, I did find where people stated that Amy had been suffering from some form of depression for a little while, and she and James were not getting along. In addition, that morning, the morning of the 11th, before she left, she and James, according to James, had a really, really bad argument that morning. So we don't know if maybe that argument sparked something in her to make her, go over the edge and say, that's it, I can't take it anymore. We also don't know what her plans were regarding Timothy, or if this was just a last minute thing. It seems like she had planned her last hours for sure. Now, there were some missing items, and this is what made investigators and other people believe that Timothy's still out there. Because Timothy's Spider-Man backpack, his toys and clothing were missing. Amy's resort clothes, toothpaste, and an iPass transponder were all missing. But it's interesting that apparently this Spider-Man backpack was one of his favorite things. So the theory is, at least what I'm thinking, is that he either, when she disappeared him, if she took his life, maybe she put those items that were his favorites where he is. Now, there was some evidence in her SUV. There was soil, some grass, and weeds on the undercarriage, as if she went off road maybe or through a field. The forensic analysis linked that foliage or the weeds and the grass to a rural meadow or a field in northwestern Illinois. It was likely Lee or Whiteside County, possibly near a pond or a stream. I wasn't able to get coordinates or the specific information, but there was also a concerning amount of Timothy's blood in the SUV back seat. Now, as young as he was, he would have likely been sitting in the back seat, not in the front seat. But the family said they believe it may be from an earlier nosebleed. I don't know about her personal habits or his dad's personal habits, Timothy's dad, but if someone bleeds in your vehicle, you're more than likely going to clean it up. And the family speaks about this as if it happened a good while back. Certainly it happened before 3 days. So to me, this is a little bit alarming. But, we don't know. We don't know. There were other leads. Amy's phone was missing until 2013, okay? So 2 years. And it was found along Route 78, but it had absolutely no clues on it. There was nothing on the phone that gave any information. But the investigators must have found something, because they did state that they believe Amy may have planned the disappearance for months. There was an immediate response in 2011 when he went missing. The Aurora police and FBI launched an intensive search. They searched ponds, they searched lakes, they searched all the known places. They issued missing child alerts and circulated the note that Amy had left behind. Search dogs and helicopters were used in the areas, and they followed through her path, knowing where she went. I guess there were receipts, surveillance cameras, and all of those places that were linked to her travel. They focused on the rural areas and meadows, basically because of the things that were found on the undercarriage of her SUV. And those locations were based on that soil plant evidence. They visited the hotels, the zoos, and resorts, and they checked thoroughly to make sure that he wasn't there, that, she had not done something to him and left him there, or tucked him into a room somewhere and said, you stay here, or whatever. Flyers, media appeals, and NCMEC, that's the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children, Missing and Exploited Children. They had campaigns, and they did age progression photos throughout. This photo that you're seeing here is a photo of him being age enhanced to the appropriate age. Volunteers joined law enforcement in search sweeps. James and the family have given repeated reviews. It's really heartbreaking when you see him, because this little guy was his world. I mean, it's amazing to me that he has kept it together the way he has, because this really devastated him. But he has gone on to different shows and talked about him. And there's been regular case reviews by Aurora PD and the FBI. There's been leads pursued nationwide, so not just in Illinois, not just in Wisconsin. And he remains on the listed, on the website says he remains on the websites as a missing and endangered child, although he wouldn't be a child at this point. Now the leads, let me go back. The primary suspect was always Amy. She was the only person directly tied to the disappearance. She left notes saying Timothy was safe, but no one will ever find him. Now, that sparked a lot of rumors and suppositions about whether or not she left him with a previous boyfriend, and I'll explain what I mean. A few years after James and Amy had gotten married, she cheated on James and they split up for a while. They got back together, but she cheated on him with one of her ex-boyfriends. And she apparently continued to communicate with that ex-boyfriend all the way through. I don't know if it's up until this, but very close to this. So those things were followed up on as well to see if maybe anybody that she was close to might have Timothy. Because it seems like if she was going to trust him with someone, and that someone was not her family and not James or his family, it might be somebody that she had an affair with, or somebody that and I'm wrong. It wasn't her ex-boyfriend. It was her ex-husband, because she'd been married a couple of times. But there's never been any evidence anybody was involved, and there's never been anything of his that were missing that were ever recovered. We talked about the forensic testing. We talked about the phone, but it yielded nothing. Multiple unconfirmed tips over the years, but nothing credible, and really no confirmed sightings of him since this time. Now, in 2019, a man in Newport, Kentucky claimed to be Timothy. He said he had escaped his captors, but after they did their due diligence, probably DNA, they identified him as Brian Michael Rennie, R-I-N-I. He was a 23-year-old ex-convict. And DNA, of course, did confirm he was not Timothy. And so he was convicted of identity theft and lying to the FBI and sentenced to 2 years in prison. And I believe he's back in jail again. I pulled information on him, and I believe he's back in jail again. Now, there's been no verified sightings of Timothy. The mom's note said he was safe, but no one would ever find him. You can see, look at the cute little boy. He's just a doll. And this is the age progression that they've done. There's no proof he was harmed, but there was the blood in the SUV. But there was nothing else. No blood in the hotel rooms, nothing there. Family members really believe that Amy placed him with someone she trusted. Now, I don't know if the family members just don't want to accept, or if they really do believe that she would never harm him. Age-progressed images continue to show what he may look like. The forensic evidence does raise doubts, and her history of depression and that note really add to an uncertainty in this case. But if he's alive, he'd be 20 years old today, and the family still seeks answers. Now, some unique or unusual facts here that we can look at. Investigators believe Amy may have planned this for months. She took 2 explained scouting trips to the same rural area in early 2011. Now, I could not find out if rural area meant those meadows where things were under her undercarriage of her SUV, the soil and the weeds. That's what I think this means, because that's what the article said. It was a rural area. And she maintained a secret email account under her maiden name since 2007, and it was hidden from her husband, but it contained nothing that was related to this. As we stated before, those items that were missing with Timothy were never found. And it's possibly a suggestion that he was starting a new life somewhere, because those personal items would have maybe kept him calmer, maybe kept him in a routine that he was familiar with, if she, in fact, gave him to someone else. The forensic experts, as we said, did trace the plants and the soil, and even they call it the glass beads. I don't know if that means the tire tracks or what, but they did follow it to a very specific kind of environment. And they could even narrow it to areas that had oak or birch nearby, and possibly a pond or a small stream. It was unusually detailed forensic lead that still hasn't cracked the case. So if you're in this area of these places and you know anything about this case, or you want to read up on this case, that kind of information is, even today, can still be useful, because we just don't know. Now, I stated that the phone was found in 2013, but because it didn't really give any information that helped us, it delayed discovery. I mean, it's delayed discovery raised questions, but we don't know why it was just there. Did did they overlook it in the searches? Did somebody come along later and throw it out? Did the person she entrusted Timothy with throw it out? She had a long history of depression and she had some prior attempts. But those close to her said that of all else, she loved her son and that she would not hurt him. One family member spoke about how she had gone out of her way to make sure that Timothy was always happy, even when she and James weren't getting along. But the morning that she took him from school, she and James did have a major argument. And so this does kind of add to an emotional context. Beyond the disappointment, the Brian Rennie hoax, that's the one where the man said he was, he was Timothy. It showed how desperate the public and media were for resolution because everybody bought into it until they did the testing. His impersonation actually delayed other investigations while authorities were working on whether or not that was him and checking his DNA. And it's an unusual side effect of media attention in child cases. Typically people keep looking at the situation, but this really delayed things because everybody went all in on this and said, oh, good, we believed this. We really did think that you were still out there. So, some FAQs you might have. Was Timothy's dad ever a suspect? No. James was absolutely cleared. He was cleared early and immediately. The only person in the family linked was Amy. Was her death suspicious? Nope. It was absolutely ruled that she did this to herself. She left notes behind in her handwriting, and the authorities have said this absolutely was her doing this. What was the argument about that morning? They've never fully disclosed what it was, but something set her off that day, I think. Did anybody else help Amy? Well, the police have found no evidence of accomplices, but here's what I'm thinking. I think that it's possible that someone else may have known what she was going to do. And it could be that she planned on taking Timothy to someone else and then changed her mind at the last minute. But I think the fact that she was scoping out an area, she had to have chosen those areas for a reason. Because she could have went anywhere. She could have went anywhere and done that. Why go to those areas? And I think if we knew why she went to those areas, we would have a really good understanding of what happened. The parents were not divorced, but they nearly divorced in 2008 after she reconnected with an ex-husband. And Amy was married 3 times. James was her 3rd husband. There were no other children at all. Now, I think this is solvable. It's very possible that she took him to someone that we don't know and he's grown up. It's also just as possible and maybe even more possible that she harmed him and he's not here anymore. But even after a decade, we don't want to close this mystery because we do have the detailed travel path, the soil and plant analysis, those missing items, and the note that she left. So there are some things that can be explored. And if this is something that you're interested in, this case, or if it's near you, we just want to ask that you give it some thought, give it a little bit of work. What we're trying to do is show a variety of different cases so that we can get more of them out there, hoping that somebody is listening in the area or that has some contacts somewhere and say, you know what, I'm going to pick up the mantle on this case and see what I can find. Because as you know, Amy's really busy, so we can't really be everywhere, especially when so much time is going into a case like Delphi and trying to figure out what really happened there. But this is another mysterious situation. We just don't know where Timothy is or what happened to him. He could be alive and living under a new identity. Um, we just really don't know. But there are some things out there that can be followed up on. He could resurface as an adult through a tip, a DNA test, or a self-identification. Remember the Carrie and Stephen Stainer story? Stephen Stainer was a boy who was kidnapped at 6 years old. Everyone thought he was gone. And then 7 years later, he not only resurfaced, but he also saved another little boy's life who was about to be groomed by that same person. Now, this is not necessarily a kidnapping grooming situation. I mean, we really don't know if she gave him to somebody. We really don't know. But the fact is, we don't want to rule out that he's very possibly alive and with someone. And just like Stephen Stainer, he was told certain things to keep him quiet, and then he eventually went by his new name. But he kept knowing in the back of his mind that his name was Stephen. Well, we just don't know with Timothy. It's very possible that he's still alive. Public awareness is going to help with this, especially if you're in that area. The longer time goes on with these cases, the problem becomes that people pass away, people can no longer remember facts, and people move out of the areas. And the areas change. So we want to get eyes on cases as soon as we find out that they've not been solved. New searches of the areas have been linked to SUV evidence. But there's been a lot of changes in DNA now, and there's a lot of things in the lab that can be done specifically with soil and grass and things like that. So that's something that maybe could be followed up on. There's thousands of unidentified children and young adults that are listed in the NamUs directory. Now, that's a website that was taken over by the DOJ a few years back. And all it does is name people who have been found, but no one knows who they are. So it's possible that, Timothy was found, but no one was able to identify him. It's hard to imagine, but if you are found, someone finds, you decomposed, it's harder to find the link to discover who you are without having testable information. Timothy could be identified if the remains are already in the system, but we just don't know. And also, someone Amy trusted may eventually come forward. New technology, genealogy databases, all of those things really need to be re-examined to see if there's anything that can bring about new leads. Now, here's how we can help. We need to share Timothy's story. We need to post about his case on social media. Post about it if you're in any true crime groups, or you're in any groups where missing children or missing persons, post this in there and really ask for people. They can come over to our channel and watch this for more information. It always helps to share. But also ask them to spread the word for anyone that might know the family or know this area. Report if you're in the area or anywhere and you see anything that could lead to a connection to Timothy. And if you hear someone's story that doesn't add up or it resembles this case, don't ignore it. Remember, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. You never know. The smallest tip can matter. The information here is to report it to the Aurora Police Department, or you can go report it on NCMEC, which is 1-800-THE-LOST. Anonymous tips are accepted. You do not have to disclose your information. Talk about the case with friends, groups, or classes, and keep the focus on solving the mystery and bringing Timothy home. I appreciate your time. I don't want to start it over. Let me get back here. This is where I want to stay. I appreciate your time and attention to this. And we're doing these as recordings because we want to get more cases out there among people and try to solve some things. I mean, this is not really entertainment in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess it can be for some people, but it really is about making a difference and pulling, resources where we can and getting things done. Somebody might be able to, get some police reports released or anything like that. But on this very last page, I wanted to show you just how much he looked like his father. I mean, he was a little mini me to his father. So, and they at one point were a happy couple. This is right before he went missing in this photo. So, thank you so much for all your time. And again, let's see what we can do to get the word out and we can help find Timothy.